Hi everyone, Kate here with another Victober video. I hope you're having such a wonderful month of reading and watching Victober content and maybe listening to some Victorian audiobooks, and I hope it's just a lovely, very autumnal atmospheric time for you. And I wanted to talk about my favorite Victorian audiobooks. Audiobooks, first, let's just out the gate, they count as reading. Let's just get that taken care of. But it is a different kind of reading experience, and you remember it in, I almost think, a more vivid way than some of your physical reading, because sometimes you can think of the walks that you took, or maybe some of the cooking that you did, or household tasks, or maybe you went for a long drive while listening to an audiobook, and it's become very memorable for you. One thing that I would love to do is to put on an audiobook of a Victorian novel that I love and drive around with foliage that I can see. And I hope I make that happen this month. I would love for that to happen. But I want to tell you about the audiobooks that are really fun memories for me and listening to them. And there are a couple narrators that are on here a couple times. And the first narrator is Juliet Stevenson. She can do no wrong in my eyes. I mean, just the way that she narrates audiobooks. I love the kind of almost gravelly quality she has to her voice. I have learned that I generally don't like audiobook narrators, male or female, that have high-pitched voices. I really like a deeper resonance and, like I said, an almost gravelly quality to voices when they're narrating audiobooks. Something about it I find really, really pleasant when it has that kind of tone to it. And I have become very picky, and also I know what I like in narrators, so I can kind of tell within a minute of listening to someone whether I will want to continue listening to them or try to find a different narrator if a different narrator is available. Like I said, Juliet Stevenson, she is 4 that I have memories of. And the first one is Middlemarch. And this is such a long audiobook, so you're going to want to love the narrator that you are listening to. And particularly, she's really good with dialogue at giving distinct voices, particularly to male and female. They don't seem contrived or put on. They sound very natural to, you can tell when men are speaking, you can tell when women are speaking. And in addition to that, I love the way when George Eliot is taking a step back from the characters and reflecting on life and bigger issues and philosophizing. Juliet Stevenson reads it so beautifully and poetically. The next one is Daniel Deronda, another George Eliot that she narrates so very well and just puts so much heart into it. And in the more heartbreaking scenes, there is so much emotion and conviction put into the timbre of her voice. And you really believe that the characters are suffering. You're right there with them while they're going through these heartbreaking things. And just her delivery is spot on. And then I think possibly in my top 10 audiobooks ever is her narration of Jane Eyre. And she has, I think it really benefits that it's written in first person, so you feel like Jane, voiced by Juliet Stevenson, is telling you this story. And I think the first person narration just works so well as an audiobook. And there's another one on this list that or a couple others that are in first person. And you just feel the cold around you. You feel the darkness. And you feel Jane's pain when she is in pain. And Juliet Stevenson does this so marvelously. And then another one where there is a lot of pain and sadness is her narration of North and South. And I think that she does a really wonderful job. I am not from the north of England, obviously, in case you hadn't noticed. But I think she does a wonderful job of doing the different accents. She's great at really hearing how a certain person would speak and then translating that herself and putting that into those characters and giving them a voice and making them come alive with her narration. The next narrator is Georgina Sutton, who does sound actually fairly similar to Juliet Stevenson. So that's probably why I loved her narration of Adam Bede. And I feel that both Daniel Deronda and Middlemarch have more upper class characters. And so if you are someone who is a trained actor and kind of to get more roles, you have that more upper class accent that you have put on, then I think it's a taller order in Adam Bede when there are the middle class, the working class characters that have the Middle English, not Middle English, like the Midlands, that's what I want to say, because Adam Bede is set in the Midlands, and they have that very local accent, and she does it really well. Particularly, I'm thinking of Adam's mother, and some of the older characters just gives a real life and zest to her narration with them, and just does it so beautifully. And there is so much heart and kind of philosophizing in a very heartfelt way in George Eliot's novels, and particularly I'm thinking of Adam Bede now since I'm speaking about it, and Georgina Sutton just really rose to the challenge of narrating this masterpiece. The next one on the list is David Copperfield, not narrated by Richard Armitage. So I like his narration, but I really love Nicholas Boulton's narration of David Copperfield. That was the first way that I listened to David Copperfield. And then this spring, when I read David Copperfield again, I listened to that audiobook all over again. And he has such a range of voices that he is able to do. Again, this is another one in first-person narration, and so you really feel that David, voiced by Nicholas Boulton, is there telling you his life story. And there's so much humor in David Copperfield, and Nicholas Boulton is really able to kind of caricature up some of the side characters like the Micawbers or Betsy Trotwood, to give very stern voices to David's stepfather, and also some of the more sinister adults that David has to interact with. And it's just a top-notch audiobook, so I recommend it. They have taken it lately off Hoopla, so I don't know when it will be back, but I love it enough that I would be willing to just buy it on Audible so I could have it forever if it doesn't end up coming back to Hoopla. The next one is the Wives and Daughters audiobook narrated by Nadia May. This is just like, listening to this is like breathing to me. And she does, for one thing, Mr. Gibson, Molly's father, who has a Scottish accent, she does that beautifully. And Hyacinth, her voice for Hyacinth, just this kind of, Hyacinth is very lofty, and she thinks of herself as so wise and refined, and it comes through so much in the voice that she gives her. And also in the Squire's voice, you just hear his frustrations with life. You hear his kind of curmudgeonly nature. And I really, really just adore this narration. And I've listened to it more times than I can count. I've lost count now how many times I've listened to it. And I come back appreciating it even more each time I finish Wives and Daughters. Then Far from the Madding Crowd, narrated by John Lee. He has a really distinct voice. There aren't many narrators that I've listened to and I think, oh, they sound like him. I really love his narration. There's something about it that sounds very kind of salt of the earth. I don't know how else to describe it, but he definitely sounds like a working man, like very strong and one of the people. And so that seems very fitting for a Thomas Hardy novel. And just to go through kind of all of the crazy things that happen in Far from the Madding Crowd, John Lee carries you through it and has you kind of on the edge of your seat as you are listening to it, and does it in just a really beautifully paced way. And the next one is the Barsetshire series by David Shaw Parker. Now, David Shaw Parker is kind of my only exception to a higher octave voice. Typically, I don't like that, but it fits so well for Trollope's writing. So kind of this, you feel like it's kind of like a gossipy man sitting and telling you, spilling you all the tea about the Barsetshire community. And he has a very like refined, pristine, precise quality to his narration, and is able to convey a lot of emotion in the narrating that he does. And something about it is just incredibly fitting for the Barsetshire series. I'm pretty sure also he's done the Pallisers series, which I have yet to. I've been conquered twice by Can You Forgive Her? It's gonna happen one of these days, but I don't know when. Okay, the next one is The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by David Timson. I cannot believe, I'm putting a Sherlock Holmes on here. Sherlock Holmes and I have a very complicated relationship. I'm a little bit bitter, basically, that many people have read Sherlock Holmes and then the more modern mystery series, which I feel are so good. And I wish people would try like Elizabeth George's writing and Louise Penny's writing, Donna Leone, P.D. James, Ruth Rendell, all of those authors that I desperately want more BookTube to read. But most people have read Sherlock Holmes. So I think that's part of my I just wish more people would read more mysteries. That being said, I have in the past enjoyed Sherlock Holmes the most in short story format because my hang up is that I really like interpersonal kind of motivations for crimes. And in Sherlock Holmes, a lot of times it's going to be money or kind of embezzlement or something to do with the government, something to do with someone who's in a position of power in the government. And those mystery plots will never interest me as much. But when I'm reading it in short story format, the kind of explanation and delving into all the details with that are really short. And I have thoroughly been enjoying. I'm currently listening to The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. I had to put this on the list. And I highly recommend it. Now, I'm pretty sure that this audiobook I'm listening to, though, it's a combination of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes and, I'll put the title here, it's the other short story collection that came, I think, right after it. So they've jumbled up the whole order. But from looking on Wikipedia, I think it's two bound up into one. But David Timson has become a favorite because he is the narrator of the unabridged The Fairy Queen, which I've been spending a lot of time with this year. But whenever I'm done with a canto, which is around 250 pages usually, then I feel like it flew by. So I am spending, each month reading a canto, and I love his voice so much. And it's just really wonderful to listen to the audiobook of it while I'm holding the physical book, because I feel that just everything becomes clear once I hear someone speaking it. Whereas I can look at it on the page and the words seem all scrambled up, but his narration is really, really lovely and expressive. And I am loving too that I have access then to his narration of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Now, two narrated by Martin Jarvis, that his voice seems now just inextricably linked to these. And the first is Three Men in a Boat by Jerome K. Jerome, and then Diary of a Nobody. And they're both very comical novels. Three Men in a Boat is about three friends who are very incompetent sailors who decide to take a boat trip down the Thames River. And just madness ensues. And they also are accompanied by a dog. And they're very bad sailors, and it makes for a splendidly hilarious book. I would not want to be on this boat trip with them. It would not be enjoyable, but it makes for great reading. And then Diary of a Nobody is a fictional diary written like it is an actual diary, and the day-to-day mishaps in this man's life. And it's so funny and just laugh out loud funny. Now, I will add that when I was looking around trying to remember the narrator that I listened to narrate Diary of a Nobody, I saw on Audible that Jeffrey Palmer has a narration of Diary of a Nobody. And for those of you who might need your memory jogged, Jeffrey Palmer played Lionel in As Time Goes By, and he is just one of the loves of my life. I am a firm fan now of As Time Goes By, and he's just glorious as Lionel, as a very lovable grump. And I thought, oh, he would be perfect for narrating the Diary of a Nobody. So one of these days I might splurge on purchasing that audiobook, and it just looked very, very enticing. The next one is The Christmas Hirelings. This is a Richard Armitage narration that I love. A couple years ago, Audible gave this away free. You could pick Jennifer Saunders' narration, but when I saw that Richard Armitage was narrating one of them, I just took that one. And especially because there's definitely more male characters in it, so it felt appropriate that a male narrator would be narrating it. And just giving sweet voices to the children that are characters in this book. This group of children, they come to stay with someone who's very lonely at Christmas, and they're going to jolly him along in the holiday season, and they melt his cold, cold heart. And Richard Armitage does this so sweetly, and it's a very sentimental book, and you can tell he puts a lot of heart into his narration. And the next one is The Woman in White, and this is a duo that narrated that I listened to and loved. Josephine Bailey and Simon Prebble, and I think it fits really well for a book that has both female and male narrators in it. So that's something that Wilkie Collins very much excels at, is having multiple narrators in his books. And I think it was a really wonderful decision to have two people narrate this book. You feel that you are getting updates from each of them, and it makes you even more anxious to get to the end to see if there is in fact going to be a happy ending, and it worked really well in that audiobook. The next one is The Treasure Seekers. This is, speaking of Simon Prebble narrates this one. This is narrated in first person, and what's really charming and endearing about this one, it's a children's book, and the narrator at the beginning is one of the Bastable children. And they say, I'm not going to tell you which one I am. I think there are 5 Bastable children, but they really stink at keeping themselves anonymous. Like, the way they speak about their character, whenever certain things happen, it makes it clear, like, they think they know, it makes it clear that they think they're the most intelligent sibling, and it's very biased writing. So it's very charming and endearing to think of it as written by a child. And I love that aspect about it. So Simon Prebble does it really well, and it's just an incredibly endearing book, and his voice seems very suited to it now that I've listened to it. And then I would love to do a side note recommendation. You can get a basic Audible membership. For some reason, I don't like getting those because it feels, I'm never all that interested in the things that are basically available. I always wait for the kind of half off 3 months or half off 4 months. And then I just think of an audiobook that I've always wanted and I get it then. I will say in the basic membership, this is available, and it is the Treasure Island Audible drama. I listened to this a few years ago, and what's weird is I can't remember the Treasure Island audiobook that I listened to. I know I listened to it as an audiobook and I liked it, but for some reason it's not striking a chord. However, the Audible drama really sticks in my mind, and it's multicast, and I think it's maybe 4 or 5 hours long, and it is worth every penny. It is so well done. All of the sound effects and different actors for each character. It's just a very high quality thing. So for those of you who think of like old time radio programs, this is that kind of on steroids. I hope that you enjoyed hearing about the Victorian audiobooks that I have enjoyed in the past. And I would love to chat with you in the comments about the different Victorian audiobooks that you have enjoyed. And I will be back with another video soon. Bye.